Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask you to resume your seats after our first session as we begin our second session. It's a great honour for those of us here at the Asia Society to welcome Vice President Jusuf Kalla. I have known His Excellency the Vice President over many, many years, and I've observed from the close proximity of Australia the great contributions he's made to the entrenchment of the democracy that we see in Indonesia and that country's continued economic progress and the maintenance of Indonesia's remarkable social cohesion. These are not small achievements for a country the size of Indonesia. For those of you who have not travelled to Indonesia, I have two things to say. One, what have you been doing? Two, make sure you get there soon. And three, when you see this country spread over this vast archipelago of thousands of islands and with so many cultural and religious traditions within it, it is no small thing that this country, this modern nation state of Indonesia, not only has come together as the Indonesian Republic, survived its post-colonial transition from the Dutch, but built such a strong political democracy and an economy which continues to grow and encourages and inspires us all. Beyond that, and through the Vice President and to his President, we would commend Indonesia's strong and growing role within ASEAN, within the G20 and within the world. Indonesia's voice is a welcome voice. It is part of the continued coherence of ASEAN, and our subject this morning here, Mr. Vice President, has been, given we are now approaching ASEAN's first 50 years, what is our vision for ASEAN's future? But it is not just a vision for Southeast Asia in which we are interested when we look to Indonesia's future voice. It's the role it will also play in the councils of the world more broadly. The G20, the United Nations, and yourself as such a prominent country within the G77. Vice President Jusuf Kalla, you are among friends here. We regard the Asia Society as Asia's home in America, and we have had countless leaders from your country and other countries across the region here over the years. Would you please welcome Vice President Jusuf Kalla to the podium?
Mr. Kevin Root, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for these occasions, and of course, congratulations for celebration 60th year of ASEAN Society. It's meaning is 10 years after UN and 10 years after our independence in Indonesia, and nearly the same when the Asia Africa have a spirit in the Asia Africa, meaning how too many, of course, you hope appreciating about your contribution for think tanks and social jobs or many things in Asia, of course. Now this is ASEAN communities here. I think all of you know about the ASEAN. We are happy for this relationship. I just coming from a meeting with many businessmen this morning. One, the question is how Indonesia's increasing his defense, his equipment and so on. I think for us, Indonesian good defense is diplomacy and friendship, not your rocket and the other thing. So, but you need that. But important thing, friendships and relationships between, especially between ASEAN. Indonesia is serious, as you mentioned, that 150 million people, the largest in ASEAN countries, and politically now on very stable. Of course, economy the same everywhere is slow downs. We hope that in the near future, according to what yesterday, that much increasingly. But what our focus in Indonesia is, besides stability, how increasing the capacity for our economy. We think that the situations will be more stable and some increase even not so according to our expectations, same as everywhere. And what ours is big capitals beside the producer and consumptions of, because 200 people need it. It's we offering many things to our friendship countries to more actively cooperations in the economy. How to the futures? First thing, we understand all that economy is interconnected. It is dependent each others. No one's countries can be independently. His economy should be interdependent. But we compete with each others. ASEAN community is one thing I usually say, compete in cooperations or cooperation in competitions with all. It means how to make efficiency. That's why we're working hard to make efficiency the countries. His many regulation now we are more simplify, focusing how we can produce and all. But one thing we are priority is basic need of the peoples. How to increasing the food securities, energy securities, and of course infrastructures for the country to make easier, to make stabilize, to make efficiency economy in the countries. We hope that this need, of course, cooperation. We know how Japan, how China, how Koreans, and indeed to compete each others. And if they compete, we should go to the other country who can make easier competition, or more efficiency compared with the country. The other side is how Indonesia should be neat and more stable in security. As the country have majority, the most Islamic population in the world, I think you know that we are very moderate, and that's why no such big issues compared like in Pakistan or Afghanistan, Middle East or something like that in Indonesia, in the country. There are some small conflict or even some rise, but this can be controlling. There's some view Bali bombing, of course, very with no knowns in the country. But with this radicalization program, with the equality program, who now very priority of the country, I think will be useful for this. Mainly now in economy side, because as you well know, the commodity price, including Indonesian producer, and not easy to this depend on the situation around the world, but we still have advantage because the local resources and local consumptions, local consumer is much higher compared with the other countries in the round. We compete, of course, besides besides Indonesia, but with educations, with training, with cooperations. And thank you for many things, the cooperation. Australia, of course, we have good relationships we just met my friends, Prime Minister of Timor-Leste. That's politically you are enemy, and then friendships are very good. They know because Prime Minister is well known in Indonesia than me sometimes because he studied in Indonesia so long. That's why this is easier to make a cooperation in where we have good Malaysia with some road, as well as many countries. That's why ASEAN itself as communities, we're learning from European Union. We don't work more than like now on as community, not one unity, not unions, but we have a community. That's one thing I think is more longer situation than if we are more unity between that. This is our policy for foreign, and as I mentioned before, your biggest defense is friendship and diplomacy. That's why we do that accordingly the situation, and how to make it the future. It's the future like that. And in economy, one thing our policy is, I just coming from Venezuela, and for me, why go there beside meeting with non-alignment summit, we know why the country reach after that big problem within only a few years, but have processed many years. That's why we avoided so many compare. Indonesia sometimes they are moving around from more liberal to sometimes so socialist because subsidize. We are using that to making more peoples have innovations and idea. This is our. We hope the future is we should changing so many things. For instance, how to make more people innovative and creative with the supporting and reducing and making the people's actively. The second thing that we are working to do is policy in economy like this. If any project that as business is feasible, let's private and company do that, including the foreign company. But if economy is feasible, that not so, business is take along, let's state-owned company and cooperation between company do that. But if public services, let government do that. This is the principles that we combining the system in the country. That's why again, thank you very much for your this friendship and attention for the country. We hope we'll be successful in the near future. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Bapak Vice President.
Yes.
And it is always good to have our friends from Indonesia here at the Asian Society. Just before you came, we were speaking, in fact, with the Prime Minister of Timor-Leste and commenting on the remarkable transition and positive growth of the East Timor and Indonesia relationship over the last 50 years. I'd appreciate your thoughts on where that relationship can develop in the future with Timor-Leste, and also Timor-Leste's interest in becoming a member of ASEAN. Your thoughts, Vice President?
Yeah, as location, of course, Timor-Leste, one of the regionally should be ASEAN. The constitution of ASEAN should be agreed all. Indonesia itself, one of whose backup agree with that ASEAN's Timor-Leste is one of our Asian member, but one country they still are not agree because the university should be in ASEAN constitution. That's why we hope that in near future maybe the country who's until now is still waiting for his agreement for that will be realized.
Well, I think all of us as friends of East Timor hope that that happens sooner rather than later. But bilaterally, your relationship is very good. It's, It's progressing very, very well. The interconnectivity, which we discussed with the Prime Minister just before, between West Timor and East Timor, I think holds great potential for the economic relationship as well.
Before when we started the conflict, depend on the mini conflict. Of course, Indonesian mini conflicts is for security reasons, and Timor-Leste at that time is meaning fight for independence. But let's say peacefully is now on, we understand. But first thing, culturally, the Timor and Timor-Leste is nearly some cultures, some religions, majority religions is the same, Catholic, for instance, and economy is interdependent in each other's. More easier, people from Leste buying goods from Surabaya than for the other countries, and of course, the culture to business. Before, so many. I came from Sulawesi, my hometown. Sulawesi people is usually traders, and coming to Timor-Leste as traders. Now on back again, some of them to make a market, and then the other thing is good. And goods from Java industry is one thing very important needed for Timor-Leste. That's why politically we are smart to do that. Economically, each other is supporting many businesses working there. Language is still easier because mostly of his his officials is educated in Indonesia before, that's why easily to communicate. There's many things that Indonesia and Timor-Leste easy to communicate, easy to make a relationship or going together.
Mr. Vice President, if you look at the future of ASEAN, you've been around for 50 years as of next year. And of course, Indonesia is a founding member. If you're looking to the future, let's say the next decade or so ahead, rather than the next 50 years, how do you see ASEAN growing? I mean, you are the largest country within ASEAN. You have a strong leadership voice within the institution. Give me your own vision and that of the Indonesian Republic's on the future of this important institution for regional stability and growth.
Indonesian consisting of 10 countries and some different economic stage. Singapore, Malaysia is one the most income is higher they compare with some countries, others. But that's why we are needed synergy with others, togetherness. And as I mentioned, that ASEAN community who's starting the early this year, starting easy community. Before many people afraid, who come? But practically it thinks it's good way. Some countries not easy to make trading because it's complementary production. For instance, Indonesia and Malaysia producing palm oils. Of course, not trading about that. We are producing rubbers, but will be cooperations much better in industry. We have ASEAN car, for instance. You producing part from assembling in Thailand or Indonesia, but producing part in each countries, and they work in ASEAN car, and they will be free of tax about that. We are cooperation with Vietnam. But sometimes we compete with Vietnam, especially Indonesia, in labor case, for instance. But this is one thing now. In ASEAN itself, so many sector. I think so many sectors in ASEAN itself. Every week, sometimes Ministry of ASEAN have meeting everywhere to make improving the sectoral thing. If do that as sometimes, for instance, there are higher. Not conflict, but big discussion, yes, in South China Sea. Yeah, we have some position, but sometimes different too in some interest different in some countries. We understand that, but principally we have in position to using like, okay, go to international law accordingly. Even China maybe have different, go to historically problems. We are going to in the way of international law. Is some different, but we are same stance if like that. And usually I think ASEAN one of the more community who have problem compared with South Asia, for instance, or African unions. We much actively or more smooth between the regional cooperation compared to other cooperation.
You've just touched on, for example, different approaches to the South China Sea from the Chinese and from various countries within Southeast Asia. That opened up the broader question of course, ASEAN's relationship with China and the United States. We all know the fundamental dynamics that China is the largest economic partner of probably all members of the association, all 10 of them, and including my own country, Australia. And at the same time, we have this deep and continuing U.S. strategic presence in the region, with U.S. allies, with U.S. strategic and military partners, and U.S. defense cooperation arrangements as well. Bearing that in mind, how do you see ASEAN balancing its relationships with these countries into the future?
Yeah, I think will be much balancing. We are in the Venezuela. We are discussing. They put it in the communique statements, but we are an ASEAN countries who attend unity to avoid its difference. Statement compare what we agreed before about that. Even the country who is some difference solution compare with majority of ASEAN country, but when its principles in outside, we are a tendency to unity and looking in these problems for the others. But sometimes historically different and implementation on look like Philippines. Before Philippines, any one of the countries who's too close with U.S. But like with President Duterte, it's not different compared with the U.S. Compare any countries in ASEAN do that.
Yes, I think we could point to some recent differences on the part of President Duterte in the Philippines, but let's not go there. We're looking at this institution's long-term future. Give me a sense, Mr. Vice President, of the future ASEAN economic agenda from Jakarta's perspective. How is it going to assist Indonesia's own long-term economic development?
We are looking ahead with the historical movement of the centers of economic growth. First, Japan. But Japan, when going to more complexity and labor problem, and Korea following with more efficient way in labors. After Korea and China, but China now is labor cost problem, and the labor intensively industry now going to ASEAN to the south, both Japan, Korean, and China is looking not only for market but for production centers because the efficiency in labor or consumer there. It's meaning they're moving industrial center because about one thing like labor costs or resources and market. I think now world in ASEAN is moving according like that to make competitiveness look on competitiveness. That's why we are optimistic in a few years. Both stability because we agree in communities and moving more efficient industry in most like labor intensive industry or even industry who still needed more worker or more technician with competitive cost. I think they look at ASEAN is one place, good place to do that.
Certainly, your economy, despite recent challenges, continues to grow, and I think it is of potentially enormous benefit to the other smaller economies of Southeast Asia as well. One further question from me on politics in Indonesia, and then I'm going to throw it open to questions from the audience. It was my privilege, Bapak Vice President, to be an election observer in your first democratic elections in 1999. Since 55, and I was in Surabaya, and I was dutifully observing the votes as they came in for Golkar, as they came in for PKB, as they came in for PDIP, and the others. Great celebration of democracy. Very moving experience to observe it. And 15 years later, also, it's been a remarkably strong democratic transition. So give me your insights as a vastly experienced Indonesian politician and from one of the great political traditions within the country. What's the state of the Indonesian democracy? Do you see challenges to it? And give me a sense of how the institutions are evolving as well.
Political institutions, for your information, all system Indonesia we have tried within 70 years. Before in 70 we are in presidentials in 45, and 49 we starting federal with the constitutions, federalisms, but only in less than 1 year. We're not in stability in federal system, and back again to unity system, but parliamentary systems. Around 7 years in parliamentary systems, cabinet sometimes only 1 year, and the others change again, no stability. And then Sukarno make a decree to back again to presidential system until now on, and with unity. Now we are make moderations with unity in presidential system, but parliament is strong and more autonomous to provinces. This is what now in Indonesian political systems. Consistent 10 party, more than compare with like US, but less than compare with like Sri Lanka or maybe Thailand, who have so many party, but there are only 10 in our parliaments. Yes, middles, and in election, as you mentioned, I think we are like celebration like festivals. There are and one time as just my experiences. I am go to Azerbaijan with team from many countries to observe the election in Azerbaijan. And after we see Azerbaijan's election is good, and one of our friends, then from Pakistan, say, no, sir, I'm back tomorrow. Why? It is no good election. Why? In my country, election, if without no bomb, no, accidents, no elections. I think, Indonesia, of course, no good election because no bombs, no death is compared, let's say, like in country in Philippines, or even so long, like I'm sorry, my friend, or in Thailand. But we are calm in election. We understand each other's. We are some friendly. The same as in the parliaments. No such black and white oppositions and government. Sometimes today he is opposition, but maybe next week he support governments. Not like in your country, like opposition is on. But we are very, very flexible political in Indonesia like this. This is our culture's politics. That's why it will be okay.
Now, I've observed DPR politics with great admiration over the years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to open it up to some questions to the Vice President, and I'm happy to take indications of interest from the floor. So those who would like to ask a question, please pop up their hand. As they reflect on their questions, Mr. Vice President, on the internal security challenges within Indonesia, we had friends here earlier from Singapore who are talking about a slow but steady increase in terrorist incidents across Southeast Asia, not pointing to Indonesia in particular, over the last several years, and the emerging problems of ISIS within the region. And something we all face in the wider region is what happens with returning foreign fighters. And we have the same problem and predicament in countries like Australia as well. Your views on security challenges and ISIS and militant forces?
Yes. We're usually talking to the terrorists when, where, what, how many die. It's not so, never, or it's very rare to discuss about why that happened. It's very so important about why that happened. You know, maybe we call it terrorism, radical, yes, of course, but why? For me, beside the radicals because he angry young man. He angry. Because, you know, when they start, all terrorists or organizations or radicals like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, everywhere, is coming from the failed country. Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, it failed because invaded by Russia. After that, America is supporting the other side, and Iraq and Syria, you know that, invaded. There are problems in terror authoritarians of governments, but invaded from big countries. And Syria government, of course, autocrated. And I don't know, there are in history that some countries bombing from any countries in the world who have an airplane. I mean, bombing by America, his government, Russia, America, French, Italy, Saudi, Dubai. What happened there? And it's mean no hope for the country. That's why we are talking in UN, the big immigration, the big refugee in the world. I think these times, if the country, young men seeing no hope, no futures, what they say? Angry. And if you see what happened in Saleh Sahabin, who from BL, who bombed Paris, never go to mosque. They don't know religions. They're angry. But the angry young man, I may experience it on born in Syria, who have very many attacking the people, each others. He's young that never practiced no such practice in religions. But after he angry, and there are some religious leaders say, if you kill some or you go there and fight, you go into paradise. And they say, oh good, I so many sin and go into paradise, we kill each other. And that's why I think it's a terrorist, very, very dangerous, very fixed, is a suicide. Because suicide should have big problems. If only just baby bomb like in here in Yantri, it's not such many victims. But suicide, so their problem, no police, no problem with this, because they're going to paradise. This paradise in sea. Why this? Because why they suicide? They don't need money because they die. They don't need a political politician like governor or one thing. They die. And for what? For paradise. This is the key is why they go to paradise. They angry. I told them, why Dallas sergeants, former sergeants who killed five white police? Is terrorists? Is religious? No, angry. They angry. That's why don't make it another angry. They angry because no futures. I say to them, if one Islamic countries like maybe Turkey or Egypt bombing Italy or Spain and invaded, what young men in Europe say? Of course they're angry. Maybe they bomb another Islamic state. This why less thinking about the way and the futures of the way. This has happened.
Thank you for those reflections. A question here and then Lulu. Yeah. If we could pass the microphone round.
Thank you. Mr. Vice President, how do you see the territorial disputes in the South China Sea being resolved, especially in light of the recent ruling from the arbitration tribunal in The Hague against China? And can ASEAN take a more unified and stronger position on those disputes? Is it capable of doing so? Thank you.
Indonesia forces usually according to Indonesian law, UNCLOS, for instance. Even America don't sign the UNCLOS. But this is our position, international law. That's why Philippines to go into court in Den Haag to accordingly to international law. This is very important thing. Whatever in UNCLOS, you don't understand that if making island who you make it a new island, it is not including your territory. Yeah, this is one thing. Our positions to do that in ASEAN, and we are unity for that in ASEAN positions. That some, of course, in language different how to make a synergy, but we are same to back to international law accordingly.
Lulu.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for your very thoughtful observation about angry young men and the danger they present to us and to themselves. So in that line of thought, since you come from a very strong business background and now you also help to lead a very important government, is there a way in which business and government can work together to create a future for these angry young men so there's something to live for rather than to die for?
Yeah, first, don't make him angry. Give him hope, give him his futures. The second thing, they need job. Because I experiences in the case, if you know the case in 10 years ago, if you go in Poso, Ambon, Christians and Muslims fight each other, 5,000 died in 2 years in Ambon. It's not religion's case. this is democratic case. In our historical, if the countries, if area is Muslim and Christians, same policy, they are harmony. For instance, if governor is Muslim and his vice governor is Christians, as well as the others. If governor is Christian and vice is Muslim. But when reform in 1997, there are, you teach us about democracy. You campaign about democracy, that the winner take all. But when that times, because many migrations and Maluku and Poso is small majority of Muslims, and they say when elections, free elections, and we are proud of that before, and mostly Muslim parties win, the governor, the speaker, and many public's job is Muslim. And our friend or our citizen from Christian, why that? Why don't no more harmony? And they're angry. But solidarity easier in religions. Solidarity. They make solidarity, starting not religions. They make solidarity with this religion. And after solidarity is coming, and they fight on behalf of religions. This happened in Dorakan. That's why when I go there, I solve the problem within 15 days. Yes, very simple. After
this is Ambon.
Ambon,
yeah.
Ambon and Poso. No, you don't go to paradise. You go to hell, because according to Islam and Christian, if you kill each others without any reasons, you go to hell. You go to hell, not paradise, and they stop it. Only that, very simple. In 15 days, they stop it.
We need your theological authority in many in many parts of the world.
Yeah. It's like that.
It's well, apart from the exposition of two religious traditions, theology, and the afterlife.
Yeah.
The other key answer, it seems to be, is jobs at the economy and employment.
Yeah.
So no economic growth, no hope,
Yeah.
and then anger, and not
Yeah.
just in parts of Indonesia maybe, but we see it right across the Middle East and North Africa. Gentleman up there had a question.
Thank you, Alberto Pfeiffer with the University of São Paulo. Thank you, Mr. Kalla, for your very candid comments this morning. You, as a seasoned politician and businessman, addressed quite well the issue of business and politics and the need of jobs as a way of fostering the sense of people in terms of believing in the future. You mentioned that you are just coming from Caracas, where you attended the Nonaligned movement meetings.
Yes.
Do you really think that the Nonaligned movement, considering the plethora of agreements and associations that your country is associated with, is still a valid concept today in terms of delivering growth and opportunities for political stability and jobs at the end of the day? And Venezuela, what was your impression about it in terms of being still kind of a leader for this kind of movement? Thank you.
Yes, no alignments. Of course, any movement should be evaluated accordingly to the times. My speech there in Margareta, not in Caracas, because they are moving to the more safety island in Margareta. Let's the history. Oh, sorry. The history of non-alignments is come from the spirit of Bandung, you know that, and the main is decolonizations, decolonizations and solidarity. I think in the world now on decolonization, not more issues. the issue is solidarizations for better economy or more peacefully in the world. That's why we should evaluate that our objectively of this non-alignment, because in the members of non-alignments, not only there are problems internally in country or some conflict between members of non-alignment itself. That's why should we have a different idea. I told Mr. President Maduro that how we can reforms the idea, basic idea of non-alignment in 21st centuries itself. In concerning Venezuela, I think the policy of subsidy, policy of socialism's policy of resources should be evaluated in every countries. How Venezuela, big countries, big problems now on, because all dependent in one commodities price. When price go down, production go down, triple problems, because nationalizations give in production go down and price of course going down. But there usually dilemma of many countries. If you like that, like in Venezuela, Egypt, or some countries in the Arab countries, is to depend on commodity first. The second thing is to hire subsidy, and then finally, like Venezuela, only two choosing. They will be stopping so many subsidy, but will be make a revolution, or they continue and they bankrupt. I think they choose the second one, because if they increase the price of oil, the price of food, and the price of everything, will there be revolutions. But bankrupts not so much different with the revolution. This is what happened, for my view.
It's fascinating your observations earlier about the non-aligned movement. I think people in the collective West don't quite get it about why the NAM started, which is, frankly, the collective and demeaning experience of centuries of European colonialism. It's by our European friends, these are things that are usually just brushed to one side. But if you're a proud set of cultures and civilizations which have been around for millennia, and suddenly you have the Dutch arrive for several centuries, or the French arrive for several centuries, or the British arrive for several centuries, and the others arrive for several centuries, this is a very scarring experience. And I fully understand, actually, the genesis of the NAM and, frankly, the culture which still lies within it in terms of what colonial powers did to Asia and the rest of the world for the better part of half a millennium. Now, we're about to draw our conversation to a close, and if there's no further questions, I have one to close with. That is just give me an update, Mr. Babak Vice President, on how things are going in West Papua. It's often been a challenging issue for the Indonesian government. We've seen evidence of good economic growth, still evidences of some degree of political unhappiness. But give me your sense of how things are going in West Papua.
Two things: political perspective and economic perspective. Papua, according to law, by law, is more federal than federal countries. In Java, any citizens in Java can be governor in Java provinces. From Sulawesi, even from Papua, can be governor if you are elected there. But in Papua, only Papua people can be governor on regency, according to the law. It is more, I think, like Californian people can be governor in Texas, or Texas governor in New York. But in Papua, only Papua people can be governor there. It's economy. Beside that, for instance, the biggest income from Papua is come from mining Freeport. The highest in it is $2 billion US. Now on, because price of copper and the other things is $500 million only his contribution for your economy. But how the central government is subsidized to Papua, it is $100 trillion US. It's meaning around $10 billion US. It's mean we subsidize Papua around $10 billion US. That's why it's politically economy we give all to Papua to make him Papua. But sometimes in every country is different cultures to develop. Now Papua, that's why we said many young men Papua to receive any university in Indonesia can be received it, even without different standards. We are still giving chance to well educators. But if you compare Papua and Papua New Guinea, I think you know that which better in his development or the others in security wise. Some separatists, but not in the mountain, the other thing make a problem. Or campaigning without false problem. It's happened, but this is not happen. That's why. Politically low system is Papua very, very special treatment with Asia. That's why they think so many harm human rights, their problems. No, almost problem is first thing they shoot police or police military there, and police take, of course, action, and maybe they kill. Oh, they're killing human rights. We never do that. Maybe 10 or 20 years that happens, but no, we are take care very, very. Good systems there in Papua. That's why we hope that some Papua people who is overseas give wrong campaigns about Papua's situations. Democracy there is good, same with in other countries. I say Papua system is more federal than federal in U.S. even thing. And if just an example, the budget for Java per capita only around 2 million per capita per year. It means around in US dollar around 10,000, 20,000 US dollar per year. I mean budget, national budget to average Java. Also Java around 300. But in Papua, the population around only, let's say, 4 million, but the budget 100 trillions. It means in average 20,000 rupiah, US dollar per capita. It's a lot. There is no reason to say we are discriminated, we are human rights there in Papua. Only from overseas problems. There's some local problem, right? But the problem is come from local government, who is mostly Papua people too, who more enjoy living in Jakarta, going around compared to runs the local government in Papua. That's why many corruption there and so on and so on and so on. But we are very strong about that. This is the couple. You can see now free. Before is no journalists, now free journalists come to see what problem in Papua now. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been privileged this morning to spend quite a slice of time with His Excellency Vice President Jusuf Kalla of the Indonesian Republic. He's openly discussed questions of politics, questions of Papua, questions of historical neighbourhood tensions with Timor-Leste, the future of ASEAN, which has been our theme here at the Asia Society this morning, as well as the Indonesian economy. You are a very welcome guest here.
Thank you.
We are strong friends of Indonesia here in the Asia Society. We want you back again. We'd like your president here to speak when he's next in the United States. Please pass that message to him from me.
Of course, of course.
And could you please put your hands together to thank His Excellency Jusuf Kalla.
Thank you.